board determinations. And so some districts have issued mask orders, some have not. Some have issued other sorts of orders, some have not. They're all different, run by their own people. But again, the primary role for them has been either through recommendatory orders or through actual restrictive orders to limit the pandemic. Let me give you just a couple of more bits of information, and then I'll take any questions. Hopefully my clients can handle some of them. Have the districts closed churches? No. Have the districts closed schools? No. Have the districts closed bars? One has, following the governor's order. When the governors began to open them up, they remained closed for a while. But they're open now in Ada County. We work with them. We made a deal, and they are satisfied, and you don't have to be arrested. Have we closed any other business? No. Have we limited political expression? No. The gathering orders always speak in terms of this does not apply to religious expression, it does not apply to political expression, it only applies to social gatherings where people, that's where the sicknesses are coming from. So, we have a lot to work on. We will be bringing you bills for you to look at. I know other people have as well. We want to work with you. Please use us as a resource as we deal with these issues. And with that, I will stand for any questions or perhaps call upon my clients as they do.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Is there any of your board members or county commissioners that wish to say something prior to questions, or do you want us to start questions now and then?
I'm not seeing anybody jumping out. Let me introduce Commissioner Al Hasbrook. He's from District 4.
Okay. Mr. Hasbrook, if you come in and please state your name and who you represent. Podium is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Bill Hasbrook. I'm a Valley County Commissioner. I just started on my 9th year. I've been 8 years on the Central District Board of Health, and I've also been a trustee for about that long as well. Kind of a quick synopsis of how it works in our county is, as many of you know, we are a recreation county. We get 30 to 40,000 vehicles on the weekend coming up to ski and play in our area. And so back in August, we, 3 commissioners, county commissioners, decided that we needed to mandate masks. And so we went to our Central District Health through me and said, we're requesting you guys to do a mask mandate for Valley County. And it worked. It worked very well. Certainly there was a lot of kickback, and there were some folks that thought we were taking their liberties away, but in the long term, the goal was to slow the virus down, because we knew we'd already lost control. Being an asymptomatic virus, we knew that was going to happen, but we wanted to slow it down enough to where the hospitals in our district could handle the demand. And we got very close a few times, but I think now we're kind of over the hump. The virus, the numbers are starting to go down. The hospitals are starting to kind of clear out, and I think it was a great success, and I think we did a great job. So I would stand for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions of this particular county commissioner? Lieutenant Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, enforcement. How did you enforce it, and what were the restrictions? Are any fines and penalties put on people who would not comply?
Mr. Chair, Representative Gibbs, basically the enforcement issue for all the districts came down to whether or not law enforcement was willing to do that enforcement for you. I know in the city of McCall, I believe there was 2 citations issued for not wearing a mask, but that was associated with other criminal activity that those people were doing, so it was kind of an add-on, so to speak. Our local sheriff, what we did with him is we encouraged them to go around and educate people. So if they saw someone in a restaurant, if they saw someone in a grocery store or in a crowded area, that they would come up and talk to them and ask them to please put a mask on and kind of educate them about the disease. Basically, you know, you kind of have to accept the fact that people have their own responsibility for their own health, and if they don't want to do this, if they want to take that risk, that's certainly up to them. But what we found is probably 95% of the people, especially the businesses, I think I received 5 or 6 emails from businesses right after we did the mandate that were very thankful. They want someone else to take that political heat, but they can now put a sign on their door that says masks are required in this business. Our workers, or our tellers, our grocery counter folks, they're all going to be wearing masks. And so it was done through education more than anything.
Any further questions of Commissioner Hasbrook at this time? Commissioner, thank you for coming
Thank you, Mr.
today.
Chairman.
We really appreciate it. Further questions of Mr. Kane at this point in time? Representative Birch?
I noticed you had a list of responsibilities, but I didn't see education, public education specifically delineated in the list. I mean, I suppose it could come under epidemiology or something like that. How big a responsibility is public education?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's actually fairly, extremely significant. You'll see in almost any one of these, some of them are entirely education. Some of them, education is a very large component. When we deal with epidemiology in particular, it is to make people understand the risks, if they have the disease, what to do, and to educate them not to spread the disease, whatever it may be. And it has been something that the districts have taken on as their primary role throughout the state, throughout the pandemic.
Mr. Chairman, so if education is a primary responsibility and if the goal is to mitigate disease processes and preserve hospital capacity, through this pandemic, I've found it curious that we haven't, or I'm at least not aware of a particular emphasis. The commissioner just mentioned responsibility for their own health. I'm unaware of any real significant educational process to allow people to have information and mitigate their own disease process. So, for instance, what I'm getting at is, I know it's vogue to say the science is settled nowadays, but when it comes to viral disease pathology, vitamin D levels in humans is directly related to the morbidity and mortality of COVID. And for instance, there's a study out of Dublin that was published in the Science Daily, and a quote from that says, vitamin D determines the severity of COVID-19, so government advice needs to change, experts urge. And so the data is literally overwhelming in relating vitamin D to the severity of virtually all virally communicable diseases, including COVID. So where would we need to get to start educating our population on how to mitigate and improve their own health such that we can preserve our hospital capacity? I mean, there literally is a direct relationship between the serum level of vitamin D and the severity of disease and mortality.
Mr. Kane?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I can't get into the weeds on vitamin D. That's not my issue. There may be somebody here that can, and I'll turn around in a moment to look. But I can assure you there's an educational component in each one of my districts that are working on this issue. If I can give one example, and I'm going to put my chairman on the spot here, is District 7. where they literally put together a comprehensive plan that basically set out, this is the way we're going to try to deal with this pandemic. And they have certain stages, that certain stages are reached and then certain things would happen. And among those is an education component. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, assuming he's willing to do it, I'm going to ask Commissioner Reed to step up and maybe
Mr. Reed, you come up and introduce yourself. Happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Chairman Wood. My name is Brian Reed. I'm a county commissioner in Bonneville County and the chairman of the Eastern Idaho Public Health Board. And appreciate the opportunity to address each one of you. Representative Birch, there has been a great deal of education go out that, particularly that I'm aware of in Eastern Idaho Public Health. The greatest surprise, if you will, to me was the amount of work that came upon these public health directors during this pandemic. I know in District 7, our director has just worked nearly 24/7 since the beginning of it. And in the early stages, that was one of the big components of it, was education. And it encompassed all boards, right? All ways to protect your individual personal health. That included supplements, included your nutrition, included exercise, and each of those components were addressed in most of our public meetings that were held. We felt we were cautious about getting into recommendations of specific vitamins, right, or specific drugs to use, because that wasn't the expertise of public health or certainly our Board of Health. But the overall ability to protect your overall health was stressed in each one of our meetings.
Further question?
So I'm glad to hear that. From my perspective, I suspect that we might need to emphasize that in a broader fashion if that was happening out east. You know, a lot of the people on those boards don't appear to be experts in certain things, but, you know, we're always told to, you know, believe in the science. You know, they're experts in the science. You know, that didn't prevent boards from passing mass mandates, but the science regarding vitamin D and disease mitigation is absolutely unquestionable. And, you know, maybe I don't know who funds the TV commercials we're seeing, you know, the guys on TV that says, I had COVID and now I wear a mask. What would it take to have a commercial such that it was worded, you know, I don't want to get COVID, so I get out, get exercise, I supplement vitamin D, actual things that are statewide educational that would give people the tools and the information to actually work towards improving their own health and therefore be less of a burden on the system. From the beginning of the state pandemic effort, preserving hospital capacity seems to have been the primary goal, and the research is unequivocal that vitamin D supplementation mitigates ventilator use, intensive care use, hospitalizations, mortality. It's so clear. And where are we, and what could we do in a broader method to educate people that they need to participate in their own health and mitigating this disease process so that we can all get back to work?
Commissioner Reed.
Chairman Wood and Representative Birch, certainly I support that and believe that it is a great idea. I again would defer to the fact that I think it's difficult for public health districts to zero in on one particular item, but certainly having ads and more public information about protecting your overall public health or your overall personal health by any supplements that you deem necessary. I think it gets back to the individual choice of the person, right? I mean, it's best for them to decide which supplements to use, but I would certainly support any type of effort to be able to encourage all those public health issues that are needed to maintain our own personal health.
Very good, thank you.
May I follow up? I should have said this originally, Mr. Chairman. I need to tell you that each district has its own website with its own dashboard with all information COVID, and it does contain a great deal of informational and educational material that you need. And of course, it mirrors in many ways what the CDC is recommending, as well as links to all kinds of tools that can be used to keep you from getting the disease, what to do when you get it, and how to treat it.
Thank you. Further, Representative Benoit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Kane. You stated that all these boards are delegated the authority from the Department of Health and Welfare from DEQ. Is it the same for every central district health board, the delegation, or does it change in different areas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Baker with a excellent question. The rules are the same at the state level. The delegations are the same to each district. From DEQ, for example, the districts came together with DEQ to put together a memorandum of understanding saying, this is the way it's going to work. You do this, you do that. At the health and welfare level, as I said, the delegatory documents were from the 1970s, but they apply to all of the districts the same, and it's the same rules. Now, perhaps anticipating your next question, they are interpreted and applied differently by the districts, but the rules of the road are the same as each district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kane. When that delegation, how does that happen? Because we write the rules for health and welfare, we write the rules for DEQ. I don't recall anywhere in the rules where we allow them to arbitrarily delegate authority to another body that isn't under our supervision. And so I'm just kind of curious, how does the screening of the delegation of authority go from health and welfare and DEQ back to the boards?
Mr. Kane?
Let me see if I can find the slide. Mr. Chairman, Representative Edwards, two ways. First, there's the statute here. This quotes the statute 39.414 that says you have the power to delegate, and you can. You'll notice also above it that whether the delegation occurs or not, that the districts must administer and enforce all state laws and rules. Also, in the Reportable Disease Act, speaks specifically about the pandemic response. My recollection is, and I'm sure of it, that in the rules themselves, in at least two places, delegation is authorized in the rules to the health districts to respond. So it's definitely in there. And we have worked with health and welfare for 50 years, and it's worked well.
Further questions of any of the participants today? Representative Lightfoot.
Mr. Wood, or Chairman Wood, Mr. Kane, have you had a chance, and I know that we will be having a public hearing on House Bill 33 that Representative Langston has brought forward. Are you working with additional legislators to kind of come forward with legislation that might work for the public health districts?
Mr. Kane.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely yes, 100% yes. As I kind of alluded to, we have been working with a lot of people. And ironically, immediately after this meeting, we're going to be meeting with a group within, 10 minutes to do exactly that. And we have a series of what we believe are proactive bills that we think you will find quite relevant, and we think you'll be quite happy with them. Yes, so 100% yes, and we know that we're going to be working with others during the course of this. Yes.
Any further comments or questions? Well, as you craft your legislation, Mr. Kane, and for all of those that are listening, there's only two reasons that we're here. Because a bunch of people don't want to wear masks, and more importantly, Representative Gibbs can't watch his grandkids play basketball. So that's the only reason that we're here. So when you craft your legislation, if you would fix those two problems and nothing more, the world will kind of get back into the orbit that it's supposed to be in, and everything will be fine. That's right, so I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Chairman, if Representative Gibbs is happy, I'm happy.
Good. That's all we're interested in. Is there any other questions or any, matter that needs to be discussed with respect to this? And I'm sure, Mr. Kane, that you or any of your public health district, board members or anything would certainly be more than happy to discuss with any member of the committee or a group of members of the committee, as long as there's not a forum at any point in time, if they had questions, et cetera. Committee, I would encourage you, as any legislation comes through, to sit down with your public health district board members and have them walk you through why this is either a good idea or a bad idea. So that when we do make whatever legislation we're gonna pass, we wanna do it right, as opposed to getting something that they can't work with. We appreciate you being here, Mr. Kane, and all of the board members, very much, and the county commissioners. If there's nothing else to come before the committee, and without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.
We got the sign.
Yes, let me know if I can help you guys. Likewise, you doing some legislative just call us with any questions.
Because they'll reduce the rate of heart disease that please do that.
Thank you.
Okay, now then, you have a discussion, you're gonna be everybody happy, like you, this is gonna last.
Well, I know, but you know,
The majority happy.
Thanks, Director Joe.
No, and I think that policy, you know, I kind of have a sort of bastardized version of President Kennedy's comment. You know, that's not what the neighbor can do for you. My version is that's not what your neighbor should be doing for you, but what you should be doing for yourself. And the research is so clear. If you meet that 50 nanograms per deciliter threshold of iron in your blood, the incidence of mortality for prevention of asymptomatic carriers, it's not a coincidence that the asymptomatic carriers are the ones that have a higher antibody levels. So if you're below the 20 nanograms per deciliter, They call it the cytokine storm, and it's the inflammatory response in the lungs